afternoon. Once again, we are bringing you one of our Christian Recorder dialogues. Over the last few weeks, we have been profiling and reminiscing with bishops and general officers who will be retiring at the 2021 General Conference. This evening, we take a special moment to remember Bishop McKinley Young. Of course, as we know, Bishop McKinley Young, who I was reminded was the first and only bishop who was elected at a general conference where he was to retire in the same city, elected in 1992 and to retire in 2001. Unfortunately, we know Bishop Young is no longer with us. He died in 2019. And so we wanted to take a moment to recognize and reflect on the career and ministry of Bishop Young, who would have retired at the General Conference. And so we are pleased today to have with us the Young family. We have Bishop Young's daughters, Karen Young Lowe, Dina Young McAllister, Andrea Young Jones, Stephanie Young, and Supervisor Dr. Dorothy Jackson Young. Thank you all for being here with us this evening. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to sit here and reminisce on someone who meant something to so much of the AME Church. All of us have McKinley Young stories. I wouldn't have my job if it weren't for McKinley Young. And just one thing before we go into the program, McKinley Young, he was a student at UChicago. And he told me, he said, I always wanted to see UChicago defense. And I told Supervisor Young, whenever my defense is, which prayerfully should be by the end of the year, you're getting an invitation. Whether you're going to be up here or watch it online, you're getting an invitation. But Bishop Young was always encouraging to me in that respect. And so it's just a delight to have you here. So our conversation will begin as follows. We have a brief video that we're going to show you, and then we're going to have a dialogue, first with Bishop Young's daughters, and then with Supervisor Young. So about the video, we got it today, and we're excited to share with you. Stephanie, could you tell us a little bit about this video that we're going to see?
Yes, thanks again, John, for having us here. Like John mentioned, all of the retiring bishops and general officers had an opportunity to talk about their careers and reflect on their careers. And we wanted to make sure that our dad had an opportunity to do the exact same thing as much as possible. So this is a reflection of the work that he's done throughout his ministry from his perspective and point of view, from footage that we were able to pull all the way from 1990 to 2000 and I think probably 16 or 17. So we hope that you enjoy this reflection coming from him and from us.
So we'll begin this evening with Bishop McKinley Young, the 109th elected and consecrated Bishop of the African Methodist Church, in his own words. Production, please roll the video. Give us a second.
To think that we would stand in the train of Richard Allen, and that we would be a part of that rich history, and that I would have the opportunity and the privilege to serve the church in that capacity of leadership. It gives me a sense of urgency. So we had these long debates and discussions and conversations and said, how do we do this? And we put together a proposal with the help of several ministers and lay people about how to include young adults in the life of the African Methodist Church. And so in order to make it happen, though, we had to appeal to the bishops of the church. We went to the Bishop's Council in Birmingham. We just talked about it a little while in the room. And asked the bishops if they would send at least 2 observers from each Episcopal district to the General Conference, and they would be seated as observers, but they'd be able to share in the proceedings and participate in the process that way. No vote, just to be able to be present. As a connectional president of the RAYC, I had a vote, and then Dr. Watley had a vote as congressional YPD, and that was a part of the legislation we did in 1968. It was challenging, exciting, but for me, it took on special meaning. The late Dr. H.C. Coswell, who was an institution in Georgia, the young people were seated in the balcony, the observers, and Dr. Coswell said, "I understand that McKinley Young and the young people," he could do a job of my name, McKinley Young and the young people, up in the balcony. Richard Allen took us out of the balcony to bring us on the main floor, and I think we ought to bring the young people down on the floor as members of the General Conference. Now, he was sightless at the time, very aged, but obviously a person of enormous vision.
Our host pastor, Reverend McKinley Young. Let's greet him. Thank him for this.
Mr. and Mrs. Mandela, Dr. Lowry, Mrs. King, members of this august body, on behalf of Bishop John Hurst Adams, the senior bishop of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, and Dr. Dolly Adams, who sits here today, and Bishop Harold Benjamin Sanatley, the president of the Council of Bishops of the African Methodist Episcopal Church and the presiding bishop of the 19th Episcopal District of our church, which embraces Johannesburg and the Republic of South Africa. I am pleased that the senior pastor of the oldest Black congregation in the city of Atlanta to say a word of welcome to our hero and our shero as we celebrate the pride of Black manhood and Black womanhood today. So welcome to Big Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church, where the sons and daughters of Richard and Sailor Allen strive to witness to the glory and praise of God. Welcome, freedom now.
I never dreamed or imagined that I would leave the General Conference in 1992 as a bishop in our church.
Machines back to zero. We're starting all over again.
Preston W. Williams, 474. George S. Willis III, 3. McKinley Young, 1013.
Viva people!
Now you can speak. Now we want to hear from you.
Now talk.
Didn't want to hear no mess.
Speak now. Speak now.
Bishop McKinley Young. Speak.
Fellow delegated, speak.
And his wife,
Bishop Thomas.
Young.
Our presiding officer, Bishop Beelan, the chair of the Election Commission, my brother, bishops-elect, and my brothers in the Episcopacy, in the greatest church in the world, the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Come. Bishop Adams, the senior bishop of the church, and the presiding bishop of Georgia.
That's the right
My father,
never pastored a church with more than 100 members. But he built churches. He loved people. He renovated them. He prepared them. He believed in them. He dreamed for them. He helped them. He enabled them, and he taught me to do likewise and to enjoy it. He's not here on earth tonight. He's on high. I'm grateful for his legacy and grateful for his teaching and grateful for his memory. And there's so many people. So many people. So many people who taught me in Sunday school, who worked with me at choir rehearsals. I was born on a street that was unpaved. It was called Buttermilk Bottom. In our language, it would be a slum, but it ain't where you've been born, it's what's been born in you. Thank you, Jesus. I'm grateful for the African Methodist Episcopal Church. I joined Big Bethel when I was 6 years old. H.I. Bearden was my pastor. It was in that pulpit that I saw some of the best that African Methodism had to offer. I saw PhDs and learned people come through. I saw the average person who shares in the life and work, and I was inspired and encouraged. So along the way, I've been helped by so many people, so many congregations, so many people. I'm grateful. I want to thank the members of the Georgia delegation who helped us tonight. It's been 28 years since Georgia elected a bill. 28 years, 1964, Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm grateful. Bishop Adams, my bishop, giving me an opportunity to work closely enough to learn how to be a good bishop. I pledge to you tonight my commitment to strive to be a good bishop.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
My wife, Dorothy, our 4 daughters, my son-in-law, all here tonight. I came earlier to make another speech. I was prepared to make it, but you wouldn't let me.
I hear you.
So glad. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, African Methodist Episcopal Church.
You are the
I pledge
people's
you my
bishop.
best.
I think the 1976 General Conference, we attempted to present to the church a proposal to create one youth organization in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. That debate and conversation we needed to have. The church didn't adopt the proposal, but what it did, it gave me the opportunity to see how the process really works. And it helped me to understand something very critical in the life of the church, and that you have to be able to hear the church's no in order to embrace the church's yes. If you can't accept that, then you will not be able to serve the church, because it will say no as well as it can say yes. Oh, it's a different feeling altogether to be on the other side of the table. I used it a lot when I was elected the bishop to talk about the Board of Examiners. The most, in addition to the work with the young people, one of the most exciting responsibilities I had was to serve as the Dean of the Board of Examiners for the Chicago Annual Conference. The late Bishop H.N. Robinson gave me that responsibility. I loved it. I loved the idea of addressing the issues of ministry. Bishop Talbot became the president of the council, and we agreed that we were going to have a convocation on ministry in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. We're going to redo all of the facets of Section 7 in the old discipline and create diverse forms of ministry and all of that, have those kinds of conversations and discussions. I thought that Bishop Talbot and Bishop and Mrs. Talbot, Bishop and Mrs. Ming, Bishop Robinson, I remember, the Mings especially were able to help capture the song and the music and the and the spirit of our people in the districts 14 and higher. I think that's our future. We are a part of the diaspora. There are people who our cousins, our brothers and sisters, that we did not grow up with. We have the opportunity to interact with them and to learn from them and them to learn from us. The African Methodist Episcopal Church, when John Bryant served as the president of the council, gave $100,000 to be shared in South Africa between the 19th, where Bishop Sonatley served, and the 15th, where I served, to help in the elections of 1994. Forums, crusades, youth gatherings, rallies, all of those, providing transportation, voter education, voter mobilization, teach-ins, all that happened with those funds and resources. The reason why they were is because our church always held elections. And the people said, I learned how to do this by being a member of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. So I think that rather than them learning from us, we learn from them. I love that music. I love the song. I love the way they understand the theology of African Methodism in a big way. I love what it represents when we see a new South Africa emerge. And we also saw a new Namibia come into being as well. All of that, and since I had the opportunity to serve as the Bishop of Namibia, Angola, and the southern part of the Republic of South Africa, it was rich and vital. So I think those are ties, connections, linkages that should be strengthened and enlarged, never diminished, because I think it's a mutual learning experience. Hopes and dreams for the African Methodist Episcopal Church. I chair the Commission on Annuity Investment and Insurance. We will bring to this General Conference after a feasibility study and a business plan that's been developed by one of our members who happens to be a layperson, a member of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, who was willing to invest over $350,000 of his own money to help make certain that we would be able to bring into reality a captive insurance program for the African Methodist Episcopal, an insurance company that we will own that will help us to underwrite and to further implement the dreams and the visions which were worked out in our strategic plan for the African Methodist Episcopal Church. I'm excited about the future and what that holds. When I think about the annuity and investment and insurance program, I think that when we get to the General Conference in a few months, we will be somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 million. That's remarkable. Very close to it. That's remarkable for a church of people.
Wow. Hearing the laughter, hearing the voice of Bishop Young, we didn't want to put these chats in, but I do want to recognize so many people have been in the chat saying thank you for the ministry of Bishop Young. I want to acknowledge Supervisor Ingram, Supervisor Mitchell, Jamie Coleman Williams, and Donna Margaret Williams. Donna Williams was one of Bishop Young's members at Big Bethel. So many people saying, if it wasn't for McKinley Young, I wouldn't have been ordained. If it wasn't for McKinley Young, he gave me my first church. And also Judge Derek Anderson is also commenting. So just the love from the Connectional Church for the ministry, not only of Bishop Young, but the entire Young family. So let's begin with the questions. So first, we're going to start with the daughters of McKinley Young. So first, we're just going to ask outright, what does it mean to you to be McKinley Young's daughter? Now, I was given instructions to go in order, so we're going to begin with Karen Young, then Dina, then Andrea, then Stephanie. So we'll start with Karen.
Okay. So, John, on behalf of my mom and my sisters, we just want to thank the Christian Recorder for allowing us this opportunity to spend some time remembering my dad and his wonderful ministry. So what does it mean to be McKinley Young's daughter? It means that you better be ready and prepared to work. My father really believed that to whom much is given, much is required. And he had very high standards, as does my mom. And they cherish work, and they wanted us to work and be a part of the church and the legacy of the church. And so if you're McKinley Young's daughter, be prepared to work.
All right, so Dina.
Well, good evening. To be McKinley Young's daughter, you can't do that without being Dorothy Young's daughter as well. What it meant or means to me, even to this day, to be his daughter means that I must always represent excellence. And I must always treat everyone that I encounter or engage with as an equal. There's no one above me or beneath me. And when you understand the power of relationships, that's what my dad modeled, then you understand the power of God's work through our lives.
Andrea?
To me, to be McKinley Young and Dorothy Young's daughter is a sense of purpose. We have a purpose in this world, and we are responsible for each other. And there is a worldly purpose. There is worldly service that we are connected, just like our church is connected. The AME Church is a connectional church where we work and live and grow together. And so that is what it means to be McKinley Young's daughter, that you are not on an island, you are part of a people, and that you are part of a past and a present, and that you have a future as long as you instill in others the importance of purpose.
All right. And Stephanie?
I would have to say pride. My sister said everything so beautifully, but Daddy was always very proud of each and every one of us. And we are always and forever will be very proud of him. And he instilled in us a sense of pride within ourselves. I know that some people go throughout their lives and never hear their parents or people who love them say that they are proud of you, but Daddy would tell us that all of the time. So he instilled a sense of pride. And that's what it means to be proud.
Wow. So as you all have alluded to, in your own ways, you are the embodiment of his legacy. And so when we sat down together to do the questions and look at the best way to reflect on Bishop Young, each one of you embodies a part of the Young legacy. So we wanted to do to take a different look at facets. So going back to Karen, I want to ask you, what did your father teach you about leadership? And also tell us a little bit about your career, for those who may not know, and just how this plays out, because this is about celebrating the Young family and what all of you all have done together. So, Karen.
Oh, okay, thanks, John. I'm the president and CEO of Lighthouse Social Service Centers. We are a nonprofit organization. We provide services to persons who are living in homelessness. We serve veterans, families, individuals, unaccompanied youth. And basically, we help people who are experiencing homelessness find permanent housing. We work with them to stabilize in that housing. We work with them to connect to their community. We work to get wraparound services there so that they can be a part of the larger community. We have 3 locations. We serve the Inland Empire of Southern California, which is San Bernardino County and Riverside County. I'm fortunate to have about 55 wonderful employees that help me to do this work. And what Stephanie said in terms of pride, my parents have always supported me, supported this work, not just with their prayers, but they've been with me. They've helped me to fix up things. They've provided funding for us when we needed funding in the beginning. So they've always shown me that they were proud and that they were proud of the work that I was doing and that I was also doing with my family and my husband. My dad, in terms of leadership, he was a servant. He was a servant leader. And he really taught me the importance of being a servant leader. He taught me the importance of partnership and compromise and coordination. And, you know, when you want to lead people, you know, people are more willing to follow you when they feel that it's a partnership and not a dictatorship. So he truly was a servant leader, and that's something that he passed on to me. He also had a real true knack for seeing what gifts God has given people, and he could put you in the right job at the right time and support you in doing that. And he just really helped you to develop and expand your gifts. He certainly believed in ecumenical service, and he believed that everybody's voice was important, that it was important to allow everyone to have a seat at the table, and for the thoughts and the concerns of all to be taken into consideration and to be heard. He was patient. He was a good listener, something that I'm striving to be better at every day. And he also understood that, you know, sometimes leaders have to make difficult decisions. And he would say to me, Karen, you know, you need to pray about it. Did you pray about it? You pray about it. You listen for God's voice. And when God's voice comes to you and he tells you what to do, then you stand firm in your resolve. And I think the last thing that I would say in terms of his leadership is that he really had a high regard for women. And he believed that women should and could be leaders in the church. So I'm blessed by his leadership example.
Amen. Amen. McKinley Young, the leader. Just reflecting on women, it comes to mind Bishop Sarah Davis. I got to work with her very closely in the 16th district, and she, you know, Bishop Young was one of her fathers in the ministry, and I mean, they're both now in heaven, bishoping around heaven. But Bishop Sarah loved McKinley Young, and she said one of the reasons why I have this robe on today is because of him. So thank you for reminding us of him not being afraid to stand behind women in leadership, especially in the church. So to Dina, my former First Lady, you have a distinguished career in education. Could you reflect with us on Bishop Young and his passion for education and scholarship?
It's remarkable. Daddy would call me his master teacher. And as I grow older, it is he who serves as my master teacher. I currently is serving as the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources and Labor and Employee Relations for the school system here in Leon County. And a very difficult role it is, because it's a role in which I have to continuously make decisions that may not be the most pleasant as a result of the outcomes that I must adhere to. But it also gives me a chance to empower people. And that's the one thing I think I can remember about my dad that sticks out in terms of his leadership, is that Daddy met not a stranger. And everyone he met, he valued. Whether you got frustrated with someone or whether you were like, what are you doing, Daddy? He never put himself above anyone else. He always found the good in everyone he encountered, and he remembered everyone's name. So if you were in his office and he had pictures up on his wall from Carrie to Centenary, he could tell you to this day, if he were still on this earth, who each of the people were in the photo. If you walked with him at General Conference, he would call everyone by name as he extended his hand to them. So what I learned through his leadership and what he taught and what I've taken into my leadership role, working in a public school system, is that I need to make sure that I'm understanding and hearing people, hearing their voices, to empower them to make a difference in their daily activities, in their routines, in their families, households, wherever they are, on the job, wherever they are. That my role as a leader must impact them to be a better person. And so that's what Daddy taught us. Now, in terms of how I process the role of education, Daddy believed and Mom believed that you are making a difference when you empower yourselves through your education. So they always pushed us. They pushed us forward and encouraged us to go to that and receive that next degree. And you do that through prayer and preparation. That's how you make a difference. So God gives you gifts and talents, but you learn to use those gifts and talents when you are empowered through education. And so this is evident in his work in the Board of Examiners, how he encouraged those persons who were entering in ministry to go to the next step, right? And to always put forth their best effort. In our role as leaders here in the 11th District, my husband pastors at Bethel AME Church, and he serves as the Dean of the Board of Examiners, the chair for the 11th Episcopal District. And how ironic, because Daddy did it for the 4th Episcopal District. And he also appointed my husband to serve as the board chair. So we understand and we carry that with us in our work, empowering people and encouraging young people and encouraging our children to be their best selves through prayer and preparation that comes when you extend yourselves through learning and the learning that the opportunities you get. So I strive in my job as an assistant superintendent of labor and employee relations, when I'm negotiating, when I'm settling, when I'm mediating, when I'm arbitrating, that what I do represents what my father taught us, and that is to empower people to be better.
Amen. And again, we can't hit all these chats, but people are testifying again to the education. Like I believe Bill Campbell said that it was Bishop Young who told him to go to school, then allowed him to take a break to continue on his work. So, and even in my own life, I mean, his love for education is dear and special to me, and allowed me in some dark moments of Chicago to keep going. So, Dina, thank you for sharing that. And I would have to take a personal moment to say thank you, Pastor McAllister. I know he's around there someplace, so I just want to say hello to him. So, moving on, Andrea, and we know that Bishop Young left behind generations. So, we'd like for you to take a moment and tell us about McKinley Young, the father and the grandfather.
McKinley Young, the father, of course, based on what everyone has said about his life and how they've interacted with him, they've had wonderful and great experiences with him. He was encouraging and loving. But then also as a father, he's extremely patient. He had a way of talking to you and encouraging you, not judgmental, but extremely encouraging and very supportive. He also, I believe, the reason why he was so good at promoting women is because he had girls. He had 4 girls, and he always told us that we could do anything that we wanted to do if we worked for it and prepared for it, if we focused on our education, if we dreamed, and then we also prayed and we also believed. And so that was extremely important for us as girls to see and recognize a man who knew that we could be anything and do anything, and would promote women and put them in roles of leadership. He was a partner with my mother, and he supported her and her work and what she did as an RN. And he also supported my sisters in terms of what they decided to do and what I decided to do. So that encouragement from a man, from a Black man, is extremely important. And it made a huge difference in all of our lives. You can look at the men who we married and how the type of fathers that they are. We learn from an example in looking at him. And so that was tremendous in helping us to become the women we are today. Also, one of the things that he imparted in us is a sense of service, as I said before, and making sure that we impart that in our children. My father was extremely, I believe, a servant leader in terms of the world. He looked at the world globally. He did not believe in silos. He knows that just like in terms of the African diaspora and in terms of African Americans going throughout the world, that he saw that there was a connection there. And so he was very strategic in terms of how he recognized that we are a part of the world and we are here to make the world a better place, and that we are supposed to lay a foundation to make sure that generations coming after us can continue on that legacy. And as a grandfather, not only did he support his grandchildren financially and helping them with schoolwork and getting to college, but then he also made sure that he exposed them, taking them on trips to South Africa, taking them on trips to around the United States, letting them know that the world is bigger than where they are, and helping them to understand that as you go, just because the world is big, it gets smaller as you travel and as you meet and interact with people. And so he instilled that in us. And he, just like my sister said, he never met a stranger. He made sure that when he went places and traveled places, that he interacted with the people who were there, that he talked to them and got to know them, learned their name. People love that. People love to feel that they matter. And he always made sure that people felt that way, no matter if he was getting food at a fast food restaurant or taking my son to the Georgia Aquarium, or taking Jessica and Jennifer and Jay Harrison to South Africa. He loved to interact and see us interacting with the world and helping us to grow and become better people. And so it's public service was a part of his life, and he believed that we should strive to make a difference in the lives of the people who we interact with, and that you never know who's watching and you never know who knows you. And that, I mean, I remember that as a child. I would be out in the mall and somebody would look at me and say, "You're young," and I said, "Oh, I had to know, I had to act a certain way. I had to make sure that I did not embarrass my family because, I'm a Young." And McKinley Young had a presence about him and a regalness about him that made him stand out and made him the type of person that people cling to and that people look to for advice and for help. And he was always there and extremely supportive. And he is so very missed. What do you do?
It's just looking in the chat. I mean, so many people are talking about him as a father, a friend, a mentor. Someone asked a question, do you think he had a favorite with 4 girls? We're not going to ask that question, but we did have a request for Supervisor Young to come into view. So the people want to see you, even though you're not talking, they want you to come into view. So my popular little man, please come on in for a little bit. And we're going to move on now to Stephanie Young. Now, Stephanie, I had the pleasure of interviewing you a few months ago, and I know that you are an emerging leader, and the world knows that you are an emerging leader in public affairs, voter advocacy. Could you reflect on your father's social activism? We saw a little bit on the video, but unpack that more for us.
Yeah. So for those of you who may not know, I'm the executive director of Michelle Obama's organization, When We All Vote. We're a nonpartisan voting initiative on a mission to change the culture around voting and to increase voter participation in each and every election. And, the fact that I'm in this job is extremely ironic, considering how involved both of my parents were in social activism. Daddy was a revolution theology. Oh Lord, I'm messing that up. He was a revolutionary theology preacher, right? He believed that through the Word of God, through faith, we have an obligation to make our community, make this country, and make this world a better place. And I, had the privilege of being with my parents when he was assigned to the 15th Episcopal District in 1992. And we moved to Cape Town, South Africa. And if you know a little bit about history, you understand that that was a transition period between apartheid and democracy. So I got to see firsthand how this country transitioned. I got to see the first democratic elections. I remember going around with them all over the country, all of the things that he spoke about in this video, the sit-ins, the rallies, all of those things. I remember that. I remember them lifting up the ballot and showing what it looked like. I remember them doing that voter education and never knowing or thinking I'd ever be in a space or place like that. That absolutely impacted my life and really changed my trajectory as to what I ended up doing professionally, because I understood the great importance and the great responsibility that we all have. And I mean, I used to think that, Daddy was so passionate, not just about voting rights, he was passionate about human rights in general. And, he didn't just leave his passion while he was watching television and screaming at the TV and different politicians who were making bad decisions, but instead, he really was a community organizer. He was an original community organizer, because that's what preachers are. That's what preachers and pastors do. They are able to organize and galvanize and move the community and mobilize them to action. action in a multitude of different ways. And Daddy knew exactly how to do that. And I was seated at the table watching this from an early age, and not even understanding the great impact that it would have on me, and the influence that it would have on me, and the burden of responsibility that it would put on me to feel like, you know, if I'm able to do something, then I have to do something about it. And, you know, his leadership within social activism has paved a way, I think, not just for me, but also he was a strong social activist for this denomination, and made sure that he was in the room and in the spaces and the places to do the work. And one thing that I learned really quickly working in presidential politics is that there's very few people who actually do the work. There's a lot of people who want to be up there, they want to be on the stage, they want to do the introductions, they want to do the prayers, they want to be in the room, they want to be in the moment, right? But there's very few people who are going to come through, and Daddy really came through. And I'm not saying that just because he's my dad, but I had so many colleagues that when I started the work that I did, talk about how much I loved working with my dad because he'd worked so very hard. So his love, you know, for people translated into fighting for them, from marching for strawberry workers in California, to helping voter education in South Africa, you know, to getting folks in Florida and Ohio and all these battleground states ready to vote, but not just ready to vote, ready to advocate for the issues and the policies that would impact their lives, and help to change the trajectory of that community, of that city, of that state, and of this country. So, you know, his activism stays with me, and it fuels me to continue going in this work, and then hopefully pulling everybody alongside me to do this, considering I know that we have a very strong church family who believes in activism, and has always been at the front of the line. And I look forward to continuing his legacy through the work that I'm doing.
Now, this was a special request that we got in. I remember when, well, I wasn't connected active when Bishop Young was elected, but I've heard the stories. And one of the stories was that and for the first time in nearly over a decade, there was actually a child in the Episcopal house. And so we had a request we wanted if you wouldn't mind, Stephanie, to tell us, you know, one of the stories of what it was like to grow up in the Episcopal house with the family, because you moved to South Africa. People, you know, still remember the fact that you went to school in South Africa, and that was huge. That was huge for the connection. So
yeah, I did. I mean, like I barely remember the General Conference. I remember like campaigning for him and eating chicken and drinking coffee, doing the things I was not supposed to be doing. And I also remember after he won, being on the floor and people saying, "You're moving to Africa." And I was like, "No, I'm not." I had no idea what was going on. But yes, I moved to Cape Town, South Africa. I lived there. I remember when we walked into I remember when we first landed there. This is what I love. AMEs are the same all around the world. When we left Big Bethel, everybody was at the gate, you know, when we could all go to the gates, and they were singing a song. I can't remember. People were crying. We get off the plane in South Africa. Everybody's at the gate singing again, singing in languages that we didn't know. And I'll never forget, you know, that moment of being there and then going to the parsonage, 28 Walmore Road. And, you know, what I loved is that my parents, my mom and my dad, worked very hard to make sure that I was well adjusted and that there was no stone left unturned. I went to St. Cyprian's Girls' School, which was an Anglican school. Bishop Tutu was over that school. And even though we were not Anglican, he supported in getting me into that school to make sure that I had the very best of education. I got to meet lifelong friends, not just through the school, but obviously through the church, that I'm still close to this day. I feel partly South African. I was there from 8 years old to 12 years old. So that's such an informative time in your childhood that, you know, I have two memories of childhood. I have one, you know, not even really pre-South Africa. It's like a little bit of Big Bethel, then it's South Africa, then it's post-South Africa. So I definitely left an indelible mark on my person. And, you know, I think the beauty of it too was that when we went, schooling's year round there. So I think we went in October, and school didn't start until January. And we traveled. Daddy went around the entire district, or I don't know if it was annual conferences that entire time. So I traveled with my parents all throughout the country by car. We did get on train sometimes, but not train, but plane sometimes, and train too. But I remember going around this entire country. And I remember my first day of school, my parents being there. I remember Daddy picking me up from school and us going the same route home around Table Mountain and listening to Wanda Nero Butler or other tapes of like gospel artists from home. I remember, church in the townships and running around with all the children. I remember the first time I understood Afrikaans when Reverend Scott, who also just recently passed, asked Auntie Katie if she was tired. And I said, no, I'm not tired. And I was like, oh, wow, I actually understand. I didn't even know how I started to understand. So that was a remarkable time in my life. And I'm so grateful that the church, through my father, was able to provide that opportunity for me. And I remember when all my sisters came and we all went to Victoria Falls and we went on night drives, safari drives, and sunrise and sunset, and all of those memories that will never, ever leave us, but also have created a global view in the way in which we look at the world. And I think that has impacted me to understand, especially in this country where people are so selfish and self-centered. This is a great country, but there are other great countries. And I was able to get that view because of the church and the opportunity that the church provided. And I will tell you, my father never, ever let us forget that. The church provided this for you. And he was so proud of that, and so proud that it was able to expose us in ways that we would not have been able to be exposed to.
Well, so I just want to let you know that there are some people who are staying up late, like it's midnight in Cape Town, and there are a few people in the chat who are from Cape Town saying we remember McKinley Young. So as we round out this segment, I want to ask the question to all of you: what is one thing that you want us to know about your father? And we will begin in the order that I was instructed to use. We will start with Karen and then work our way through Dina, Andrea, and Stephanie.
The one thing that I would want people to know about my dad is just he's a busy guy. He was busy. He was doing, had lots of responsibilities, but he loved his family and he loved his wife. And that model of love and marriage, of respect for your wife, of love and care for your children, I think that's the most important thing. He is, I think Andrea said, is a model for us in terms of, when we picked, our spouses. And so just his love of family. And even, I just want to also say, even though he was really, really busy, and you would think that, we talked about the fact that, he could remember everybody's names and all that. And that was so true. But he also could remember the thing that you said to him 2 weeks ago that was important to you, and for girls, for your dad to remember that and then later say, hey, how are you still feeling about that? Or, hey, how did that turn out? Or is everything okay? That means the world to you. So just his magnificent love for his family.
Dina?
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So, Daddy, what I would want everyone to know is that my dad had the best sense of humor, and things that many people didn't understand. He got jokes, and he was not afraid to laugh at himself. And he could take a good joke too. And so that's important, because I think as serious-minded as he was, and as polished as many of you all saw him, very meticulous about his presentation and his delivery. He had the best laugh and could handle a joke any day of the week, and could take a joke even if it was on himself. And I think that's important to understand, because when you can show people that you know how to have a good time and that you can relax, then they know that you're human. And Daddy was incredibly human, with a wonderful sense of humor. So that's what I would have you all to know.
So glad that we got to hear his famous laugh at the end of this. Andrea?
I would like people to know that my father found things very special. That was one of the things that he said about how special. When we would come together as a family, it was a special time. And he knew how important that is and how rare that is sometimes for families, and how rare it is as families grow up and they move away, you know. And so when we could come together, he believed in things being special. And he also believed in our specialness as his children and as his family, but then also in recognizing the specialness in other people, finding, like my sister Karen said, finding that niche, that what someone can do that is special, that they can contribute to the church or contribute to their community. He believed in that. And so when I think of him and I hear his voice, I always hear, that's so special, that's so wonderful, and that you should value that because of its specialness. And so that's what I want people to know about Daddy.
And I'll wrap it up. I just realized, like, we're all kind of long-winded, so thank you for bearing with us. But Daddy was kind. And, you know, the older I've gotten, the more I realize everybody is not nice. And Daddy was kind. And it's just rare and it's genuine. And I think that sometimes when you have funky intentions, you assume that somebody else does, but Daddy never had bad intentions. He couldn't hold a grudge to save his life. We all hold the grudges for him. Okay. He couldn't hold one grudge. So he was a kind person. He believed in the best of people, even when they showed not the best of themselves. And that is something that, I hold dear and would like to do better. I feel like I'm kind, but I feel like I could do a little bit better on the understanding that we're all human. We all make mistakes and we all kind of get off course at times, and we don't always act in the way that we need to. But he understood how to be kind and to be forgiving and to let things go. And I will always admire that.
Well, thank you all for sharing your recollections of Bishop Young. And now we'd like to invite Supervisor Young to come in full frame for a few questions. And, you know, Stephanie, you said you were somewhat long-winded, but let's be clear. People are here staying with us. If our numbers are going up, because there is so much love for Bishop Young, and we want to remember, celebrate him and honor him on this evening. So, you know, take all the time that you all need to take. So, Supervisor, thank you for joining us today. We're going to make a quick adjustment like I was instructed to do and do this. Okay, so Supervisor, first I want to begin with this. So you walked with McKinley Young throughout his entire pastoral career. Could you reflect on, can you share with us what did you view as his biggest accomplishment as a pastor? What was his biggest challenge? Because you were there in the parsonages. I visited Cary Tercentenary, so I know what that church looks like. I visited the churches in Chicago and Big Bethel. So just take us back to McKinley Young, the pastor. What was it like walking with him through the parsonages? We need you to unmute, Supervisor. Andrea, can you help? There we go.
He did.
All right, we got you.
Thank you, John. Yes, it was a wonderful journey, being the first lady of wherever we were sent. And what I noticed is that my husband was always sent someplace that needed work. He would work we would work very hard, and he would work very hard, and he would build up the church and it's, everything, it's membership, it's coffers, everything. And then we were sent somewhere else where they had no money and needed a lot of work. But he loved that. He loved being a pastor. And so it meant that I had to sometimes leave my job. I was a nurse, and I would leave my job and I would go with him. I don't regret it. Not one time do I regret it. His was a priestly and administrative work in the church. Mine was a lay ministry, and we both supported each other in those separate ministries. In two of the churches, there were high-rise buildings, beautiful senior citizens buildings that were going to be lost. My husband worked along with the officers of the churches to save those, one at Ebenezer Evanston and the other one at Big Bethel. So though it was, it's not building big churches or doing those kinds of things that is always meaningful, but working with the people and having the church open, 7 days a week, with Alcoholics Anonymous, drug programs, pastoral counseling programs, the welcome table, Saturday schools, ethnic schools. So all of the things that he did to try to build up the local church, which he loved very, very much. And I remember when he ran in 88. And of course, he wasn't a delegate, and he didn't win, of course. So somebody said to him, "Now what are you going to do?" He said, "I'm going to go back to Big Bethel and pastor." And that's what he did.
You said you were a nurse. My mom's a nurse, and that's one thing I know we've talked about. And I know that that gives you a special heart, and a special heart for caring and making you, a helpmate. And so understanding and being in at least several of the churches, both here in the 4th District and the 6th District, I could testify to the pastoral ministry that both of you left behind. I hear the churches that talk about their pastor and talk about the first lady who took care of the whole church. So I think it's important to note for all of us listening that, like you said, even though he was from Big Bethel, most of his career were these churches that, a solid ministry was keeping the doors open, loving other people. And again, I encourage you.
Even Big Bethel.
yeah, even Big Bethel. But it's good to hear that. So, Supervisor, you brought up 88, which takes us to 1992. Now, the 1992 story, that's the first thing I learned about a General Conference. Even though I wasn't a delegate to 2004, the first thing I heard about General Conference was what happened in 1992 with McKinley Young. Now, we saw the victory speech, but can we see that important and that legendary General Conference through your eyes?
Well, it was very exciting. We put our children and all of the things that we were going to take to the General Conference in our car, and we drove to Orlando. It was very smart that we decided to have one group come and work, and then we had another group come after that, because we know that first group would get tired and in campaigning. And so we had a very vigorous campaign, and we let everybody know that if the church lifted us up, we would do the very best that we could do. So at the time, they didn't, they voted by ballot, and then you had to wait, and then you had to decide on, what the ticket is going to be and all of that. So I didn't really have that much to do with that. But campaigning with the children and with members and friends was what we did. When he was told by his bishop that he had to come out, that was a very, very sad time. But there's one thing about my husband: he respected authority. And because of his love for the church, respect for authority, and respect for Bishop Adams, he was going to pull out. And when Bishop Adams said that it was all right for him to run, then we started campaigning again. And I thank God for Bishop and Mrs. Adams, and for all of those persons who walked with us and worked with us to give us this opportunity to serve the church at this level.
But we remember at the 90th General Conference, it was, the legend that, he was like we heard in the video, he was going to make one speech. And it was told to me, I think you're a little bit modest. It was told to me that you are the one, or one of the ones, who said, you have to stay. That was the story that was told to me.
Well,
and he stayed. So go.
But believe me, I didn't say that until I heard Bishop Adams say that.
Well, of course, but
Yeah,
but the story that was told to me was that he wasn't listening to the bishop. He heard the bishop, but he listened to supervisor and waiting to say, "You stay in this." That's what I was told.
We're going to run. We're going to run. That's all. Yeah, yeah. So it was a exciting time, and I want to mention this about being elected and going to the 15th district. The time that we went, there was a transition going on. The bishops and the supervisors who came before were not able to stay. Because of apartheid, they could not stay. They had to go back and forth. They had to, turn in their passports, lots of things that they had to do, and they suffered a lot. So when we got there in '92, we were on that cusp, and it was a blessing that we were then able to stay and be with the people. So I want to make sure that people understand that times were changing, and we were changing. The church was changing as well.
Yes. And that's why there's also so much love. Again, the main people from the 15th district said, we will do what we can to be on this, because you all were the first Americans who could stay in South Africa, who were allowed to stay there continuously. And that was something that was always treasured. Yeah. So, Supervisor, I think it was last year that you were able to lay a wreath for Bishop Young at Arlington National Cemetery, and we were able to share some of those photos in the Christian Recorder. But beyond that national recognition, what do you see as McKinley Young's legacy? You've talked about Bishop Young as the pastor, as the bishop, as the father, as the social activist, as his life partner, as someone who was married to him for over 50 years. What do you see as his legacy?
That's a very hard question, John, to ask. And that's why the girls decided that they would, we would use some of his own words. There were so many things that my husband was able to do and be a part of, from the youth work that he did to the SEDA, being in charge of SEDA and working with SEDA, from all of the things that he did with social action, and what he did with his pastors and churches, and all of the work that he did as the chair of the boards. Chair of the boards of Edward Paul Quinn College, Edward Waters College, Wilberforce. So that's a lot of work, and that's a lot of raising money and actually preventing the loss of accreditation for Edward Waters College. So he worked very, very, very hard, even when he might not have gotten the support that he would have liked to have gotten. He continued to work, and those schools are doing well. And I thank God for the schools and for the bishops who are serving, there now. So there are so many things that I think are should be lifted up as a part of his legacy. And I think that the girls have mentioned some of them, and I want to just mention what he said he wanted to do in as a bishop. They put down he was a leader with a vision. Okay.
Let's hear it.
The vision was evangelism, church growth, and membership development. Encourage a balanced international evangelistic thrust for the establishment, development, and cultivation of local congregations, long-range planning and training. Shared leadership. Help the church move toward an inclusive vision of shared leadership. Dialogue between all units of the church. Encourage lay participation. Encourage intergenerational participation. A commitment to social change. Encourage the church to be more vocal on the critical issues of our times. Informed perspectives. Focused ministries. Now that's what he said he wanted to do. And I think, and I know that he worked very hard to do all of those things. And I just thank God for the journey. It was a wonderful journey. And as there are many videos around Bishop Vashti interviewed him, and he talked about strategic planning. He talked about the convos. She asked questions about all of those things. So they're out in the atmosphere. They're out there for people to look at. But I want you to know that the church is stronger today because they elected McKinley Young a bishop. And I pray that as we move off the scene and pass it on, that those who come behind us will have the same kind of dedication and love for the church and respect for authority that he had.
Amen. Well, if looking at these chats is any indication, I think that the legacy of McKinley Young is keenly felt, admired, and embraced and loved in our church. And listening to what you said, you know, for those candidates for the episcopacy who are on this show tonight and who are listening or who will watch this later, listen to what McKinley Young said he was going to do. Look at what he did. And then if you are blessed to be elected to serve our church, please do likewise.
Absolutely. And John, one of the great joys of his life was to become the senior bishop. And in his own words, if it's all right with you, we will end with what he said about being the senior bishop.
We can definitely do that. We'll have our production team wrap us up with McKinley Young and his final words as the senior bishop.
Thank you.
We'll give them a second to pull that up.
Mm-hmm.
While we're waiting on that clip, I want to acknowledge, oh, here it is. All right.
What I think characterized the fathers and the mothers of the church was that they were captured by a sense of urgency. What I must do now, what I must do to make certain that we seize the moment, that we don't allow any part of this to be lost or wasted or missed. And so what I want to do is to stand on the shoulders of those who have preceded me and to do the Sankofa look, and that is to look back as far as we can, even into the heart of Richard Allen, and to do the future look. That's what the Sankofa is. It's the bird which looks in two directions at the same time, and look forward to see all of those who are yet to come, and to be excited about knowing that the words and the teachings, the life and the witness, the work and the ministry started there, but it will not stop even now. It's going to have even greater significance and greater meaning. It's going to take on a whole nother life, empowered by the technology and the stream of history that flows. And in light of all the challenges that are before us, it's going to create for us another horizon. And that's what I think, that's what the senior does. The senior points to the next horizon and calls the people forward that they might embrace it. And the horizon is the place where you see sunrise and sunset at the same time. I don't know what that scientific name, but if at one point in space you were able, if you could see it, you could see both the setting of the sun and the rising of the sun at the same time. It is that vision that leadership has to capture, to appreciate the blessings of those who have shouldered the burdens and brought the inspiration, and then to look and gaze into the future to see the new prophets and prophetess that God will send, knowing that that will be a new word, and to be a part of that, to be somewhere listening, as our parents say, to be a part of that, to carry my portion of it and to deliver it into the hands that are outstretched, waiting to receive it, and for them to take it to the next place.
You're muted, John. We can't hear you. You're muted.
There we go. Thank you thank you for being with us here today. We've had some persons ask you about where they can see these videos, and I believe, Stephanie, you were going to tell us where they are available.
Yes, so I uploaded the longer video where Daddy does talk about all of the accomplishments that he had throughout his ministry on my YouTube page, and I'm trying to figure out how to tell you that. But if you just Google Stephanie L. Young YouTube page, you'll see it. It'll be right up there. But I'll make sure to share it in the chat following this where everybody is, so you can see that. And I'm sure we'll all put it on our pages as well. And John will make sure that you have it. And everything that we share tonight, we'll make sure that everybody has that.
And both the videos we have today are already on the Christian Recorder page. So we're happy to just, they're there. We wanted to debut them here first, but now that they're debuted, they are there in perpetuity for the Connectional Church. But thank you all. I've been given one more task. Bishop McKenzie wanted to make sure that I acknowledge the Young family and your participation in the documentary AME Church Next, and that McKinley Young's legacy still is here with us. And Supervisor Wicker also wanted to say a few words. And just, again, thank you for being here. So thank you all. God bless all of you. We're going to move into our announcements. The bishop has had the last word, so I'm going to go to the announcements so we can all go home. But thank you all. Thank you all so much for allowing us to spend some time to honor Bishop McKinley Young. So thank you.
John.
Thank you.
All right, so we will now move into our announcements and then move on from this evening. It has been indeed a wonderful, wonderful evening. First of all, we again encourage you to, you all know I live by the train. This has become a running joke when we do these dialogues. I normally am able to avoid it, but some nights, no. So we encourage you to support the Christian Recorder by buying a subscription at $36 a year. Visit thechristianrecorder.com. As you know, we will be doing the coverage for this General Conference, and so stay tuned for updates. We're looking forward to sharing with you and letting you see what's going on at our General Conference. And also, we thank you for our subscribers who have allowed us to be able to continue giving you these dialogues even in the midst of this pandemic. We also encourage you to support the publishing house for your church, school, and worship needs. We encourage you to visit IamAme.org and AMECpublishing.com. Again, visit the publishing house website. That is AMECpublishing.com. And also IamAme.org for your worship needs. We also remind you that the Christianity in Context series is our premier product, and we encourage you to go to IamAme.org to look at those videos and use them in your local churches. We have a special announcement regarding the Anvil. As I stated, the Anvil is the Council of Bishops learning resource, and Bishop McKenzie is putting together the final documentary, AME Next. And so we are asking persons, if you have photos or video, particularly of women in leadership, youth, and churches serving during the pandemic, that you will email them to, and we're going to put the email address up here, markkellytyler@gmail.com. They are working on this documentary that will be shared hopefully by the end of the General Conference, and we encourage you to send your photos or your video. I'm told the quality does not matter. They can work with what they need as content. So support the Anvil by sending your videos or photos of your ministry in the pandemic, or of your women in leadership, youth in leadership, to markkellytyler@gmail.com. We'll be sending out another email about that as well. Our next dialogue, our final dialogue before the General Conference, we are saving the best for last, will be with the retiring Episcopal supervisors on June 29th at 1 p.m. We will be hosting a roundtable with Reverend Dr. Jessica Kendall Ingram, Dr. Stan McKenzie, and Dr. Dorothy Jackson Young, that will be moderated by Ms. Janita Ferguson of the 6th Episcopal District. We talk a lot about the bishops, we celebrate the general officers, but we know that the Episcopal supervisors have a huge and important role in the ministry of this church, and we want to acknowledge and celebrate them as they retire. Today, our dialogue was sponsored by Sylvester Scott Beeman for Bishop. That is the Reverend Dr. Sylvester Scott Beeman for Bishop. He is the pastor of Bethel AME Church in Wilmington, Delaware, and his candidate number is 401. Once again, that is Beeman for Bishop, number 401, the pastor of Bethel AME Church, Wilmington, Delaware. We're going to close our dialogue this evening with an announcement from the Sons of Allen, advertising their walk around the block that they will be doing this weekend. Take a look at this announcement and see how you can help the Sons of Allen and help me to share their ministry safely outdoors during this season of pandemic. We'll cue the announcement, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.